Welcome back to Daily Dose of Knowledge. If you're new here, subscribe and stick around because today we're going somewhere most people never think to look. If you watched part 1, you already know what power is, where it comes from, and why some people naturally accumulate it. Now we go deeper. Today we're talking about power at the scale of entire societies. Not power in a single room or relationship. Power in the systems, institutions, and structures that shape your life every single day without you ever seeing it directly. This is the part most people never think about. And that's exactly how it's designed to work. Let's start with a question. Who actually holds power in a society? Most people would say governments, politicians, billionaires, and they're not wrong, but they're only seeing the surface. Real societal power is far more distributed and far more invisible than a list of powerful names. Sociologist Wright Mills introduced the concept of the power elite in 1956. He argued that power in modern societies is concentrated in 3 interconnected groups. Those 3 groups are political leaders, military commanders, and corporate executives. And they are not separate worlds. They constantly rotate between each other. Politicians become corporate board members. Military generals become defense contractors. Corporate executives fund political campaigns. The boundaries between them are deliberately blurred. This is not conspiracy. This is structure. And structure is far more powerful than any individual because it persists regardless of who occupies the positions within it. Think about it this way: presidents change. Prime ministers change. CEOs change. But the systems they operate within remain largely intact. The faces rotate. The power structure doesn't. That distinction is everything. This is the first hidden truth about societal power. It is structural, not personal. And structures are almost impossible to see from inside them. French philosopher Michel Foucault took this even further. He argued that power in modern societies doesn't primarily operate through direct force or obvious control. It operates through knowledge, norms, and discourse. Whoever controls what is considered normal, acceptable, and legitimate controls behavior far more effectively than any law or threat ever could. You don't need a guard watching you if you've internalized the rules so deeply that you police yourself. And that is exactly what modern power structures achieve. They do it through education systems, media, cultural norms, and language itself. The control becomes invisible because it becomes internal. Think about the concepts you take for granted. What counts as success? What counts as a good life? What counts as intelligence, beauty, and productivity? These definitions didn't emerge naturally. They were constructed. And they serve particular interests whether you realize it or not. This doesn't mean everything is a manipulation. It means power shapes reality in ways that feel natural because we were born into them. The fish doesn't notice the water. And most people never notice the power structures they swim in every single day. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful tools of societal control: manufactured consent. Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman introduced this concept in their landmark work on mass media. Their argument was simple and devastating. In democratic societies, you can't control people through force alone. So instead, you control what they think. Media doesn't tell you what to think directly. It tells you what to think about. It sets the agenda and decides which stories matter and which voices are credible. It decides which questions are worth asking. And crucially, which questions are never asked at all. The most powerful form of control is not censorship. Censorship is obvious and creates resistance. The most powerful form of control is making certain thoughts simply unthinkable, by never giving them language, never giving them airtime, never making them part of the conversation. This is why the most important questions about power are almost never the ones dominating your newsfeed. The loudest debates are often the least consequential ones. They serve as noise that drowns out more fundamental questions about who benefits and who decides. Now let's talk about economic power and how it translates directly into societal control. Wealth is not just comfort. Wealth is the ability to shape the environment other people live in, to fund the research that becomes accepted knowledge, to donate to the institutions that train future leaders, to own the platforms that distribute information, to lobby the governments that write the rules everyone else must follow. This is why economic inequality is not just a moral issue. It is a power issue. Extreme concentrations of wealth translate directly into extreme concentrations of influence over shared reality. Studies consistently show that in countries with high wealth inequality, policy outcomes correlate far more strongly with preferences of economic elites than with preferences of average citizens. What this means practically is that in highly unequal societies, the political system functions less as a democracy of people and more as a democracy of capital. Votes matter. But money talks first, louder and longer. That is not cynicism, that is documented reality. Now here's where it gets personal. How is this actually affecting your life right now? The jobs available to you, the cost of housing you face, the quality of education you received, all shaped by power structures operating far above individual choice. The healthcare you can access, the information environment you think within, the opportunities that feel available or out of reach, all of it touched by these structures. This is not an excuse for passivity. It is a call for clarity. You cannot navigate a system you cannot see. And most people spend their entire lives reacting to the outputs of power structures without ever understanding the structures themselves. Antonio Gramsci, Italian philosopher and political theorist, introduced the concept of cultural hegemony to explain this dynamic. He argued that the most effective way the powerful maintain their position is not through force, but through making their worldview the common sense of the entire society. When the values and assumptions of those in power become the default lens through which everyone sees reality, the system becomes self-reinforcing without requiring constant coercion. People defend the very structures that limit them because those structures feel natural, inevitable, and just. This is hegemony at work. It is extraordinarily difficult to see from inside it, which is precisely why most people never question it. Now here is what understanding all of this actually gives you. What is the practical value of seeing these structures? The first thing it gives you is clarity. When something in your life feels like a personal failure, understanding structural power helps you distinguish between what is within your control and what is the result of systems operating above the individual level. This is not about removing personal responsibility. It is about accurate diagnosis. You cannot solve a structural problem with purely personal solutions. The second thing it gives you is resistance to manipulation. When you understand how manufactured consent works and how cultural norms are constructed, you become significantly harder to manipulate. Not immune, harder. And in the world we live in, that difference matters enormously. The third thing it gives you is strategic clarity. If you want to build genuine influence in your career, your community, or your field, understanding where power actually resides tells you where to direct your energy, not at the symbols of power, at its actual sources. Knowledge, networks, narrative control, institutional positioning. These are the real levers. And they are more accessible than most people realize once you stop chasing titles and start building actual influence. Power has always been the organizing force of human societies. It determines who gets heard, who gets resources, whose life looks which way. Pretending it doesn't exist doesn't protect you from it. Understanding it does. And that understanding starts exactly where you are right now, asking the questions most people never think to ask. That is your daily dose of knowledge for today. If this two-part series changed how you see the world, drop a comment and tell me what shifted for you. Share this with someone who needs to wake up to how things actually work. Subscribe because we are just getting started and the next video goes even deeper. I'll see you in the next one.